Welcome to another episode. Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Interest, here with Rich Klein. We're doing an episode today that's going back to the basics. If you're not a collector, but you want to be a collector or you know somebody that's getting into the industry, what do you want them to know if they're just getting into it? If you're the parent of a budding collector, what should you know in order to help that probably young person to have a good experience with what they're doing? We're going to talk about card shops, stores where cards are sold, and what happens if you've never been in one. And we're going to look at it both from the perspective of the collector as well as potentially the parent, the mom, the dad, the older brother, somebody else, so that there's an opportunity to walk through it and demystify some of that experience. Before we get into that, I'll tee it up for Rich, but we've got sponsors to thank: Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, a couple of great card shops, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, and Panini Tops and Upper Deck. Panini Tops and Upper Deck would probably be in that card store, as well as some other manufacturers, some of which may be defunct. But I would imagine, Rich, if you're a 10-year-old kid or a 30-year-old kid and you walk into a card store and you've never been in one before, it might be pretty overwhelming. Or if you're the mom or the dad bringing the son or daughter, it might be overwhelming regardless of your age.
Well, I will tell you, as we were doing this, I just realized I'm thinking about the first time I ever went into Sports Corner in New Jersey, in the Antique Mall in Montvale, New Jersey, the first sports card store in the country. And I was overwhelmed by just the amount of cards. I walked out with a few cards that day. It was truly random, hit and miss. I actually chose very well what I bought. They weren't in great condition, but I got to be honest with you, I chose well. The two cards I bought that day was a T206 Joe McGinnity at a common card price for T. It was probably 50 cents because I knew he was in the Hall of Fame, and I figured any Hall of Famer at a common price was good. And a creased, not real nicely, but creased 55 Topps Jackie Robinson, because I had heard of Jackie Robinson at my age. So, and I knew he was important.
Should you have stopped there, Rich?
I should have stopped while I was ahead. Yes, those are the type of people I should have focused on always and forever.
Wow.
So I did really well my first day. But I was just amazed by the depth and variety. And mind you, this is like 1970.
Who was the owner of that store?
Rick Barudin, who's no longer, and Buddy Kurzweil, who I believe still has.
Do you know what their other claim to fame is?
Well, Buddy's a big Rangers fan.
But you remember what their claim to fame was in 19...
They were the first baseball. They were the first baseball card store in the country.
They were the ones that bought the Mantles.
That wasn't them. That was Rob Cohen at the
Fort Washington.
That wasn't them. That was Rob Cohen from R&B Coins.
Then they were the sellers.
There
were three of them.
There were $3,000 each.
Yeah.
They were the sellers.
So they were the sellers.
They were the sellers.
I was there, and it was fantastic. It just was a buzz around the show. We digress. So you walked into this card. Yeah.
And it's in the basement. The Antique Mall is in the basement of this building in a strip mall in Montvale, New Jersey, where later Alan Rosen, actually not in the same strip set, but he had his office in Montvale, New Jersey. And my old friend Tom Contino ran shows for a while at a hotel in Montvale, New Jersey. So Montvale, New Jersey is actually
the capital of the hobby. Capital of the hobby.
One could say that
at one point.
And there
was a lot going on the East Coast.
There was a ton going on. Yeah. Tom's son Rob is starting to do the Garfield Card Show occasionally, but we are really digressing.
Okay, so you're walking in the card shop. You apparently were not so overwhelmed, partly because you had a lot of baseball knowledge.
Right.
And I think if you don't have knowledge about the sport, and baseball was our first love, but we're also familiar with the other sports. If a kid is not into the sport, or the collector, potential collector is not in the sport, it's going to be difficult to figure out why one person is worth more than another. And if you're a mom or a dad or somebody that doesn't follow sports, you're going to think, wow, how could this card be $10 and this other one be $1?
And in those days, it was pretty easy. We didn't have as many card companies.
And there wasn't as big a differential.
Right, and we didn't have the complexities we have today. Yeah. And so that's part of the challenge for any store owner, especially, I go to Nick's on Saturdays about once a month, and it's busy in there. And if you bring a kid in there on a Saturday, there may be 15, 20 people in the store. Or I go to Triple Cards, which is 5 minutes from my house. There may be 10 people in there. And again, the owners or the managers don't always have enough time to answer every question, which means you've got to budget time so, to at least understand the basic questions you need to answer. Now, both of those stores have very kid-friendly.
Did Nick and Debbie, when they're the longtime owners of Nick's, did they have any new collector program or anything? Because when you first walk in, if you're overwhelmed, you turn around and walk out. I mean, do they have a way to draw them in and help them to get acclimated?
Yeah, they had things.
They had to be doing something right to be in business for that long.
They had things like we'll call it the kids' good deed bags. You know, they would have
a report card thing too.
They had a report card thing. They also had at the front of the store T-shirts and other kid type items that were available. They also had like we'll call them grab bags of cards, that always had either a jersey or an autograph for like $2 or $3 or $5. Yeah. So you could always have something at an accessible price point.
But they wouldn't do like, hey, you don't want to buy that. You want to buy this instead, and really steer them towards something where they get a good bang for their buck. I think there's some cheaper products that aren't great investments, but would be a lot of enjoyment.
I think at the very beginning they tried to, do more of the, let's say I don't want to say the grab bag type of things, but more of the just get a feel for what a card is, which is kind of a good idea. So you don't have to worry, whether it's Topps or Panini or Upper Deck or anything like that. You're just getting cards, and then maybe you have local cards. They had 50-cent, every card, let's say that booked up to $3 was in the 50-cent bin. So if your favorite player is...
Otherwise, you don't know what to pick.
Right. So
you're not going to pick a brand. You're probably not. You're probably going to pick a player that you think I want to identify.
Right. We talked about Mike Gordon and Howie Gordon and Dave Kingman. So let's say Dave Kingman's were in there. So you can go in there and pick up, 5 or 6 Dave Kingmans if he were still active at the 50-cent bin. Miguel Cabrera or...
Okay. But at that level, there's no mistake that's on the order of a felony. If you've got $5 or $10 or $15 to spend, $20, and you spend it wisely or unwisely, that's not going to change things for most people. But nowadays, stuff costs a lot more than that.
I think, but that's the way to begin. We're talking about beginning. So you begin small, and you should.
But you could walk into a card shop and say, "I got $1 to spend."
You might get an opening day pack, or you might get 2 singles. But you have to understand that that's where the personality of the owner really, or the personality of the people working in the store, come into play. What can we do for the person who originally comes in with $1? Hey, the next time they come in, they may have $20 or $30, and then we can, sell them a few packs or a few cards.
How can the mom or the dad that's chauffeuring this younger person, perhaps, how can they help them to have a good experience? What understanding do they need to have? Again, obviously, all cards are not created equal. All card shops are not the same, but it's difficult to have restraint when you come into this candy store and there's all this candy there and you're trying to figure out what to get. You can't buy it all. And how to know, is there any insight or way that the mom or the dad can pass on to say, hey, you need to understand this, that this brand is a more premium brand and this has this. Where would they begin?
I think you begin at the beginning. I think you begin if you're smart, and I'm not saying everybody is, but you begin. That's why I stress the small investment to begin. The Knicks has $5 grab bags that have 200 cards in them. You're not going to get hurt by that. You're not going to get hurt by some of the...
You're not going to get hurt worse than the money you put in, right?
And if the money you put in is negligible, and then you get these cards and they're kind of cool, hey, let's go buy some more cards now that I'm...
So what you're saying is the problem might not be on the purchasing side. So you walk into a card shop, you've got $5, and Gary Vee is now famous for saying you walk in and you get a pack for $5 and you pull out a multi-$1,000 Luka Doncic card from that pack. Again, that's...
The odds are astronomical.
The odds are astronomical, but the other danger for the parent or for the responsible party that gave the $5 is to not, because there are situations where the kid buys the pack, opens it right there, gets a good card in there, and somebody says, I'll give you $10 for it. And it might be worth a lot more. And so for collecting, you need patience.
Yes.
And you need to be willing. I think it's helpful to be able to do a little bit of research to say, and so if you're the parent, then you say, well, let's take those cards home. Let's not sell them instantly. Let's go look them up. And there's different ways. Obviously, Beckett, our former company, has an online price guide and availability of, there's a lot of data out there, and you'd get a ballpark idea. But you wouldn't, but sometimes kids are impatient. And the other kid says, hey, I'll trade you for that. I'll give you 2 for 1. But that kid who's a more experienced trader is giving the common versions of your favorite player and trading for, you have an obscure player that you don't think you care about, but it's serial numbered or has some kind of a swatch or an autograph. I mean, kids take advantage of other kids. Adults take advantage of other kids. So how do you help your son or daughter, this new collector? I mean, one of the things we did in Beckett Publications is trying to create a level playing field. But unless you open up the magazine or go online, you could be at a disadvantage.
Well, I think, as you said, there's always people trying to take advantage of you. But I think one of the whole keys, as you said, was knowledge and patience.
Knowledge and patience.
And that's really one of the keys.
And that's part of what you need for growing up. You need to, and frankly, it's even knowing what you don't know. And the nice thing in the industry, there are people that in their publications that can help you learn what you don't know. And so don't be in a hurry.
And I don't want this to sound wrong, because there are times where making a mistake is horrible. But we've all made mistakes in this business. You and I still make mistakes to this day. And we still sell stuff, or we still buy stuff that's too cheap or whatever. And as long as it doesn't really hurt you, if you make a mistake and learn from it, it's not the end of the world. I mean, you don't want to sell a $1,000 card for $1. But if you sell a $20 card for $8 and you don't feel happy.
Well, so what you're saying is that maybe the better choice is, if you're the mom or the dad, and this kid is getting in there, is that you could give, again, if the kid earns his own money, that's one thing. But if it's an allowance, or he's give him some money, he or she could buy the cards, but you'd impose maybe a discipline. Don't sell right away, because that's where you can really get burned. You can't get burned too bad if you buy something for $5 that was only worth $4, or you spent, $20 and you got $10 worth of value. But that $20 a month later could be worth $40. And if you gave up on it too soon, or didn't really know what you have, or some of these kids and adults too, leave cards on the counter. And that's a scary thought.
I tell the story, and we'll conclude with this. When I was helping, and I go to my friends Henry and Hunt's, they had a store called H&H Hobbies in Garfield, New Jersey, a truly neighborhood store. They had 1985 packs through 1986 at 50 cents a pack. Great buy at that price. So people would open the pack. If they didn't get the Gooden or the Mattingly or the Eric Davis or whoever rookies were hot, they'd leave the cards on the table. One of the cards they left on the table, I'm sure, was Mark McGwire. Think about all those $300 bills sitting on the table, sitting on the counter.
Well, he wasn't even in a regular Major League uniform.
And there are some people who still believe that's not a rookie card, even though we disagree with them. That's a different subject for a different day. But
thanks, Rich. Again, we'll do another episode that, again, we don't want to have only episodes for advanced collectors. We want to encourage people to get in this great hobby. And so we'll do some more of things like this. And again, we're titling the issues in ways that if you think an issue will be helpful, you'll listen to it. And if you don't, you can pass it by. It's BeckettInsights.podbean.com, or available on iTunes or Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all the different places where Downcast, Overcast, all those places where podcasts are found. Or you can email me at Dr. James Beckett, all spelled out, DOCTOR, jamesbeckett@gmail.com. So again, delightful to be with you, Rich, and to have our listeners. We will do it again tomorrow. Thank you.